Okay, I would like to bring to you what I would consider some decently good news from the state of Colorado. So, this is an article from the Denver Post. Colorado Democrats eye sweeping new union rights for more than 250,000 public sector workers. The article goes as follows: Colorado Democrats say they want to take a natural next step in their pro union push with a bill to allow all public sector employees in Colorado to join unions and collectively bargain over pay, benefits, and working conditions. This follows Democrats working across two legislative sessions in 2019 and 2020 to reach agreement with Government Jared Polis on a bill allowing union leaders to engage in collective bargaining on behalf of the roughly 30,000 people who work for Colorado state government. They succeeded eventually, with Polis announcing his support just before the pandemic set in. He signed the policy into law, and last month he and the state union agreed to ratify a new contract, the first of its kind in Colorado, that included several years of costs of living raises and more paid time off, among other new benefits. The planned 2022 bill would affect all public employees, not just those working for the state. If you're a worker, no matter who your employer is, you should have some basic rights, said Senate Majority Leader Steve Finberg, a Boulder Democrat who plans to sponsor the bill. He noted that public sector workers aren't generally afforded the same unionizing and negotiating rights available to private sector workers. The bill is still in drafting, but the plan is set to introduce it in the state House of Representatives in the next session, which begins January the 12th. It would be headed in that chamber by House Majority Leader Denia Esgar, a Pueblo Democrat who also negotiated the 2019 and 2020 bills for the state employee union. Unlike earlier bills, this one would not by itself force change. It doesn't create new unions or require existing ones to engage in collective bargaining. Instead, it would state that the public sector workers have the ability to unionize if they choose, and it would lay out terms and bargaining for employees that make that choice. Those terms, among other bills, details are not finalized and could change before the policy is introduced. Proponents estimate more than 250,000 workers to stand to be affected by the policy, including those who work in public education, first responders, and anyone else employed in the public sector in Colorado outside of state government. The bill is assured pushback from public sector leaders. Under current law, those officials do not need to recognize employee efforts to unionize. A group of workers can say they're forming a union, but that union would largely be ineffective without recognition from its town, city, or county leaders, and without the ability to bargain over contract terms. So I just wanted to read that last little bit to show you the situation that we're dealing with and what we could move into. So in this year of labor unrest, I would like to call it, we've seen many strikes, many workplaces pushing to form unions. It'd be a good idea for at least, the Democratic states, the states where the majority of Democrats are in power, in state offices and what have you, to ally themselves with the unions, with the working people, as they work from the outside, that being the unions and the workers with their strikes and other practices to fight for better. The politicians could work on the inside as some form of an ally, and use state and government power to help them in their aid as they fight for better working conditions, higher pay, healthcare, pensions, and all the rest of it. And here we're seeing in Colorado a little bit of development, essentially to make it easier for people to form a union and also for these unions to be recognized by the employers that they would like to strike against or collectively bargain against, and just be recognized on the basis of being in existence as a union. Because I believe in that article I just read that they can be largely ignored under current law. And look, I'm no expert on this, so I can't really go around and tell you which states do bar workers from joining a union. I don't know how many of them there are, but what I can tell you is that there is a vast majority of states, specifically Republican-led states, that have what's called right-to-work laws. Now, they're not what they sound. They are anti-union laws, and they actually crack down on unions and make it very difficult for workers to join a union, if at all. And there's a statistic, I don't have it in front of me, but workers in states that have right-to-work laws make less than workers in states that don't. Okay. Also, workers that are unionized, I believe this article stated it, but they typically make, on average, 13% more money than the average non-unionized workers. And they are 28% more likely to have employer health care provided to them. Also, just another caveat, this doesn't really go along with what the discussion here, but if we had Medicare for all, you wouldn't need employer-sponsored health care. So the employer would actually save money there. Little caveat for you. But look, man, in 1947, I believe it was, um, the business community went to work, of course, after the New Deal passed. And what we've seen following that is this repudiation from the business community and the owner class and the elites, as they're called. Nothing about them is elite, need I remind you, except for their ability to rob you of your money. They went to work and they destroyed the labor force. They destroyed the New Deal, its policies. And the first thing that they did was enact the Taft-Hartley Act. It was passed in 1947. And this is essentially anti-union legislation. And it makes it very difficult for workers to join unions, once again, if at all. And one of the most amazing things that that act did is that, among the many things that it did, was so if a union were to fight for let's just say higher wages for its workers, the workers that aren't a part of the union, if the union wins whatever fight, the workers that aren't a part of the union can get the benefits of the victory that the unionized workers won. You get what I'm saying here? So the workers that aren't a part of the union can reap the benefits that the union won for the workers that are part of the union. That's incentivizing you essentially not to join the union. And that cracks down on the very meaning of solidarity. And it gives way for these scabs in, workers that don't support their other workers. So essentially get the benefits that their coworkers won, through hardship and through fighting and what have you. But look, this is seemingly good development in Colorado. Hopefully more states, specifically blue states, and maybe some red states if they're pushed far enough, although I don't have much hope, if any at all, for them to take action like this and to do more things like this. And Joe Biden says that he wants to be the most pro-union president in history. So far, he's not doing a good job at all. When we see news about unions and worker strikes and what have you, whether it be Frosted Flakes, Nabisco, John Deere, Starbucks, all the rest, all he has to say is just release a statement. That's all he has to do is say stuff. He's not going to actually pass legislation. What happened to the PRO Act? What happened to many of the pro-worker legislation, things that he had that he used to boast when he was on the campaign trail? Nowhere to be seen whatsoever. But once again, this is good development. Hopefully, we can see a rise in the unionization of the public sector workers and just the American workforce at large, because we know that when they are unionized, they do incur better benefits as well as many other things.